Welcome, members of the glorious class of 2022. I'm not sure if it's the largest graduating class we've ever had, but it's pushing the limit. And welcome families, friends, loved ones, fan bases gathered here to share in this unique Bates ceremony created by our graduating seniors to share with all of us. It is wonderful, I can't tell you, to see you in 3 dimensions in this iconic space on Bates' historic quad. I'm reminded of the 2nd grader from Petaluma, California, who I heard on the radio this year. She was asked by a reporter on NPR how she felt when her school went to a mask optional policy earlier in the spring. Excited, she said, because we can finally see everybody's personality. It is so joyous to have all of you here with us today with your personalities in full view. Given the particular experience that you, the class of 2022, have had, this gathering is a powerful opportunity for meaning-making and celebration. You're coming of age in fraught and vexing times, which have made seemingly endless demands on you to adapt and function and grow in a world and on a campus where conditions and the rules are constantly changing. But guess what? It's commencement weekend, and you're here. Getting to this point, on the single most joyous weekend of any academic year is always a huge accomplishment for our graduating seniors. But you guys have taken it to a whole new level. You have been through semesters to modules and back to semesters. You've had jam-packed lunches and long dinners in Commons like you're supposed to. But you've also had grab-and-go meals on a freezing Garcelon field. You've had classes on Zoom, not on Zoom again, study abroad, on again, off again, short-term, canceled, 2 years in a row, and this year finally back. Yay. But here you are, after all of this, and you should be so proud of yourselves. And I just want to tell you guys personally how profoundly grateful I am for the patience and grace and generosity with which you have navigated this challenging college experience of yours, one that was not what you signed up for and not one we would have chosen for you. I so respect what you've achieved, and I also so appreciate all of you parents, families, and loved ones for the support you have provided your students throughout this unusually challenging journey. Baccalaureate is a time for reflection and celebration, and this year both dimensions are intensified. It has been said that performance is a celebration of the fact that we contain within ourselves infinite possibilities. So I invite you all to take advantage of this opportunity for quiet reflection in an otherwise busy and logistical weekend, and to savor the offerings that have been conceived and prepared by the amazing class of 2022.
Please join me in a centering word of an opening blessing in whatever manner is most at home for you. Holy One, sacred many, let us join together with the trees and wind and somehow this miraculous sun in a moment of collective blessing as we center into the sacred ceremony of gratitude and reflection. We sit, we breathe, we reflect, and we feel, knowing that in just 24 hours, you, beloved graduates, will have commenced from this place and into the world. This is one of those rare moments in life when we know just how precious our time together is, and we take a moment to savor it. Feel this blessing. May each graduate know they are surrounded by a grove of loved ones, friends, mentors, and teachers who always knew this moment would come, who had unwavering belief in your capacity and courage these past difficult years. Feel their blessing and their support in your bones today. Remind yourself that you did not walk this path alone. May each graduate see in their mind's eye the joys of this place, the things that were unexpectedly silly, the inside jokes, the familiarity of these paths and these people. But we are people of balance, so also recall the heartbreak, the frustration, and tears shed in these hallways. You have compassionately felt it all and grown and grown and grown. Feel your own strength in your bones today. Remind yourself of your multitudes. May each graduate sense the magic of what awaits in the unknown folds of your life. You have learned so much here at Bates, and now you will learn even more out there. Be attentive to that gentle pull of the thread that connects you to all you've experienced in this cozy little quad in Lewiston, Maine. But feel in your bones today the hope and wonder that accompany the gift of an unknown future. Remind yourself that there is so much you do not know, and ignite your spark of curiosity. May this baccalaureate ceremony be a space of reflection, of gratitude and blessing, one that leaves your hearts full to the brim for this journey to come. May it be so.
Broadway is a long way from Mississippi. I made the trip at my mother's invitation. She lived in Independence, Missouri, my hometown, but devised a scheme to gather her far-flung family in New York for Thanksgiving. At the time, I was working as the HIV social worker at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson. When I arrived in New York, I was surprised and excited that my Midwestern mother had arranged for us all to see the musical Rent. I had heard of it because it won a Tony Award, and I knew that one of the characters was a drag queen with HIV. Maybe my mom didn't know that. Sitting in the darkened theater, I was not prepared for what I would feel when the cast sang the song Seasons of Love. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing it. When I heard the music, I saw faces. Images flashed in my mind of people who died of AIDS. The people who came to the HIV clinic lacked the money to see the same doctors in private offices. They struggled day to day. They were mostly Black with a few Choctaw and other people of color in the mix. All the structures of power in Mississippi were designed to push them down. They were far from the circles of power, and in the calculus of the state, their lives didn't matter. The song spoke of another way of measuring the meaning of a life. How about love? That chorus rang true to me. Love was an accurate measure of the value of the lives of people who lived and died with HIV in Mississippi. They loved. They were loved. Now we are still enduring another pandemic. 1 million people have died of COVID-19 in the United States. That is pretty close to the entire population of this state. Imagine Old Port in Portland, a ghost town. Empty boats adrift on Sebago Lake. Popham Beach in peak season reclaimed by piping plovers. A one followed by a trail of numbers obscures the people behind those numbers. They are loved ones, fathers, mothers, grandparents, co-workers. Each one matters. They loved. They are loved. In a world that has experienced so much loss, we are all, to quote the prophet Isaiah, acquainted with grief. We pause now to remember what Wendell Berry has called the presence of absences. We remember the people who have died, whose lives continue to be a part of us, and whose presence we feel on this notable day. We remember those we love who simply could not be here this morning, but are with us in spirit. In this brief moment of silence, please be mindful of those who have lived and loved, whose presence we feel today. Thank you. May love be a through line that connects you to the past and guides you into the future.
An offering of poetry. I lied on the grass before hawthorns, surrounded by a host of dandelions, gyrating their fuzzes in the mist. Wind puffs, a sweetness fills my sockets. What little seeds landed on my cheeks, I smiled and lent them to my dreams. Gliding along the wind, the seeds land atop the library. It is here where I began the humbling journey of realizing that satisfaction comes from within and that happiness and emptiness are one. Over the puddle stands a small building whose small stature cannot contain all the ambitions it brews within. Around its columns swirl the music so innocent, it grabs the warmth of Maine and makes it more. At the end of every dream, I return home to Clayson, who embraced my childish arrogance 4 years ago, now inks the colons that send me off. Timidly, I enter the building so timidly, to only awake myself, not those whom I call family.
And finally, we are forced to leave these spaces. For years, we've sought something close to home in this place that is cold and dark and hollow. We watched winter, lonely, empty, break open into spring. Here we are. It is May. The red-winged blackbirds conquer the puddle, dandelions dance from every corner, the magnolia sings 1,000 blooms. The culmination of 1,000 moments, we reach this moment. Music, masks, challenges of change, tears shed in quiet corners, a shared season of darkness. But today, the sun paints smiles on our faces and finds us under the eye of achievement. We did something hard. And faces fill with pride around me, telling me who loves me, who understands that we had to get through the winter to bask in the warmth of the sun. I have watched a moonrise over Lewiston, seen sweat and art and patterns bleed through this campus. I am scared to know what creatures live in the water, but not too scared to leap.
Each quadrant of this loop produced a complex integration of pain and joy. And if I were an emotionally mature 20-something-year-old, then maybe I could recite a series of solutions, an algorithm perhaps that will neatly sort this blend of emotion into good and bad. The good, no great way that it felt to start a new journey, to get into a classroom and have your thoughts picked apart, challenged. The giddy feeling of always trying something new with nothing borrowed, but the bad, no hard experiences from those that walk this path before me, wishing for more but instantly feeling ungrateful. Disappointedly, I am forced to remember the good, no, great, absolutely fantastic chance that I get, this 20-something-year-old, to ask my questions, find my answers, curate my experiences and differentiate that joy from pain.
Some of us have been sick. Lungs have been taking in the fear of 2 years running, and now I find myself wondering where it has gone, if it has somehow dissolved in the fever or just concealed itself, while others continue to hold their alarm away from the body, yet close, not quite unlike this moment. I have been thinking of remains, of what is alive in the shadow of illness. I offer this, knowing it is inadequate. In the days before she passed, my mother wished for color, a new red for the living room, blues for the room I shared with my brother, so that grief's shadow itself was living and complicated. Should you need it, I can direct you to some color of our own, to the covers of books in the library and the magnolia, which has glowed pink for us these last few weeks, to the red-winged blackbirds, which are darkness glossed with warmth while they wait, perched on the reeds.
Even after 4 years, there's so much I still don't know. Some days, I wonder if I'll always see the distance between who I am versus who I want to be. I don't know if I did college right, or if I'm a better person at 22 than I was at 18. There's nothing profound I have to offer about the grief, the loneliness, the gradual loss of people I thought I'd grow to love life with. But I'm still here, aren't I? I'm here, hands perpetually chapped in the Maine colds, jaded about winter and America and the future. Same old, but I'm here, clinging onto a different daily faith. The classmate who wants to know how you're really doing, the girl in the bathroom who pretends not to notice you're crying, the girl in the bathroom who does, the sort of compassion that still manages to bring you to tears. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sai. I'm going to be reading a vignette about a little bit about my time at Bates. I've always maintained that Pierce House is the best of Fry Street. I remember arriving at that stately blue building, absolutely ready for sophomore year. I was to be a housing coordinator of Music House, a motley assemblage of Bates kids who wanted to be a part of or just around the music community here. I ran it with my good friend Owen. We met and bonded instantly because of music and wanted other people to have a shot at the same raucous sort of fun that we so thoroughly enjoyed. But first, we needed some things. On one of our first days back on campus, Owen and I took a trip to Lowe's. We bought a couple of cans of spray paint and a long canvas drop cloth, the kind used to protect the floor while painting. We came back to our new home and set to work. I took my box cutter and made a crude stencil out of cardboard. It read Music House, except the O in house was a pentagram. This was a slightly controversial decision, as we didn't want to be seen as off-putting to anyone uninitiated, but in the end, it was deemed very important to our image. Besides knowing that Pierce was a designated music house, people needed to know that we were edgy and alternative, and everyone knows you can't do that without a pentagram. After Owen and Gray hauled a big, comfy Goodwill couch to the porch, we were golden. After a summer of anticipation, we were ready to make Pierce the chillest spot on campus. I think the first few weeks of September at Bates are a really magical time. It's before the fall chill sets in and all of the leaves fall off the trees, and well before the fallen leaves are replaced by that massive flock of crows. This is an aside, but if you know me, you know that I love the crows. Fittingly, around Halloween, they swoop in from somewhere farther north and take up in Lewiston, supplanting ducks and seagulls as the landscape's dominant bird. It's almost cinematic what they do. On the quad, when the bright red and orange leaves are gone, it looks drab and overexposed. It feels dim, cloudy, haunted almost. That particular part of campus at that particular time of year feels like straight out of a Tim Burton movie. The crowd sits in the bare trees all winter, making them look as if the leaves haven't fallen at all, but instead turned black and shiny. All of this is nice, but the crows are noisy as hell and not a pleasant sound to wake up to, so I savor the days before the crows arrive, even as I anticipate them. Anyway, September feels like the best of summer and fall at the same time. Most everyone is in high spirits, not worn out from the semester's workload just yet, and everyone looks fresh and familiar. It's lively and bright and warm, and I absolutely love to take it all in, sinking into the couch out front, and dozing off in the sun in between classes. I love a good porch, but the Pierce House one in particular felt luxurious. Besides our couch, the long steps up to the house and the big canvas banner meant that, from the street, it was nearly impossible to see who was sitting there. Most afternoons, I welcomed the surprise that awaited as I climbed the steps, wondering who I would see, postponing my homework to sit and chat. The next few months felt like what college was supposed to be. I think music has such a special pull. It brings people together, of course, but it does more than that. Playing music with people and sharing a space of creativity and vitality makes me feel alive in such a unique way. It's so much more than songs. It's making jokes and puns, sharing links to Wikipedia pages, backyard photo shoots, road trips, smuggling strangers into commons. It's sweating as we haul equipment from the BMU to a tiny car, and from the tiny car to Fry Street, and back again to the BMU the very next morning. It's putting up flyers in the common room of every house on Fry, and trying your best to soundproof Pierce, drawing the curtains and ushering people through the back door so as not to draw attention to the activity happening there. It's dancing and moshing in the crowd of that space and being picked up when you lose your balance and fall over in the crowd. It's rushing outside for a breath of fresh air because the number of bodies so close and in such a small room makes the air feel hot and thick. All of the heat caused by that wild energy makes the cold ear feel even better. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Hoffinger, and I'm currently the music director of the Bates College Gospelaires, the Christian, thank you. The Bates College Gospelaires, the Christian music singing group on campus, which is weird because I'm Jewish. I have to admit, I never started college planning on leading a Christian singing group. My dad is Jewish, mom is Catholic, but I was raised Jewish through and through. Bar mitzvah, Hebrew school, the whole 9 yards. Just to show you how unchristian I was, back in the day, my favorite Christian holiday was Black Friday. The reason why I currently lead the group is because the Gospelaires was a club on life support. Since Bates is such a small school, so many clubs are on life support per se. There are probably under 10 people that show up regularly, and it is always difficult to find people that are willing to make the commitment to fill leadership positions. Almost anyone that shows up is important to the club's community, and the future of the club, in many ways, literally rides on them becoming a club leader the next year. The Gospelaires, however, was a club with a unique problem. Before the pandemic hit, the Gospelaires were composed of both students and community members. Anyone from the Lewiston community that wanted to be a part of the group could come to rehearsals and sing with us. However, when we returned to Bates this year, the majority of the previous student members had graduated, and due to COVID restrictions, community members could not come to campus. We lost nearly all of our members, and furthermore, these community members were like the best singers and musicians you had ever heard. The only people remaining in the group were Martha Reyes, the busiest person on campus, and Ben Hoffinger, Jew. Before COVID, my time in the Gospelaires began at the beginning of sophomore year. Prior to joining the group, I had been rejected by every single a cappella group. I joined the Gospelaires just because I wanted to sing more often. I certainly wasn't a worship music lover, but I was willing to give it a go. At first, I felt insanely awkward in the space. Anyone was welcome to join the Gospelaires, no audition needed, but it was still very strange to be one of the few non-Christian members. I was definitely not used to singing music about Jesus or even praying in community at the beginning and end of rehearsal. However, over time, I got to know the other students and community members and grew to really enjoy singing in the space. And then COVID hit, and cut to a year and a half later, and Martha Reyes and I are figuring out how to start up a singing group with just 2 people. Neither of us had led a choir before. Neither of us could even play the piano. However, I remembered more of the group songs from before COVID, so we decided that Martha would become the club president and I would become the first Jewish musical director of the Gospelaires. In late September, we decided to hold a first rehearsal, see who showed up, and sing along to some YouTube videos of worship songs. 5 people somehow heard about it and came to the rehearsal, and since September, we have learned 5 songs, recruited a couple of student pianists, and even performed 2 times. Some of our members grew up going to church, some of our members are Jewish, and probably like half of our members are atheists. But every week, we gather to sing, worship, and be in community in one of the strangest worship spaces to ever exist. And it is tremendously fun. But now, I'm graduating, and the Gospelaires won't be part of my life anymore. And it makes me wonder, what did it all mean? You know, maybe the Gospelaires continue and swell to be one of the biggest student clubs on campus. We could maybe even have like 10 people. Or maybe 2 years from now, the Gospelaires doesn't find a new club president and it dies out. The only thing I know, and what I'm proud of most, is that the Gospelaires and Christian music have a shot to continue at Bates. My hope is that just maybe, when students in the future are looking to sing worship music, or just looking to sing and have fun, maybe the right singing group for them will be the Gospelaires. Especially for Christian students, those for whom worship music is their tradition, and especially for students that are not Christian, but are still looking for community. The Gospelaires, both as a member and a music director, have taught me that community and a common purpose, no matter how unlikely that community is, can transcend identity and unite if we're willing to give that community a space and a chance. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oliver Barrera, and I'm just here to share a little bit about my Bates experience. In her song, Saint Nobody, Jessie Reyes sings, "My daddy came from nothing, so I gotta make this something worth the nights that he stayed up fighting. My mama came from nothing, so I gotta make this something worth the nights that she stayed up crying." When I first came to Bates, I believed that as a first-generation college student, I would have to do everything I could so that just like the song, this opportunity would be worth it. I came with my 2 suitcases and all of the carry-ons I took from my family members traveling with me and set upon a journey to do everything, join everything, and make my time at Bates worth it. And so, when I was tasked with thinking about a specific moment during my time at Bates for this vignette, I struggled because so much of my time here was spent being busy. I was either going to meetings or job shifts, leading a club event, or planning one. And throughout my 4 years, I lived by Google Calendar, and I preached of its truths often. I was obsessed with the idea that busy meant success and fulfillment. As first-gen students, we are thrown into a place that we have been anticipating our entire lives. Most of us have heard of our parents talk about the education opportunities that they missed in their lives, and so we grow up seeing ourselves as the culmination of their dreams and aspirations. Being the first in your family to pursue a college degree means inheriting dreams that you can't necessarily reject. And so we come eager and ready to ensure that our time at Bates means something, especially since we are not only fulfilling our goals, but the goals of our parents as well. Looking back, it was my sophomore year when I was busiest at Bates, and I again felt satisfaction from the fact that I was working 3 jobs and was constantly too busy for anything else. I had noticed that other first-gen kids at Bates filled similar positions around campus, and I knew that we all shared a drive and passion for making our time at Bates worth it. And then COVID hit, and our college career came to a standstill while the world processed and dealt with a time full of so much uncertainty and death. Being sent home meant that I stopped filling my days with everything here at Bates and took a step back to rethink how I saw myself as a student here. It also meant that when I came back that fall, I knew I wanted to change from what my experience had been for the past 2 years. I'd been away from campus for almost half a year and had come to realize that I wasn't truly enjoying Bates to the fullest. I realized that I switched out what would be special, unforgettable moments for more work shifts or responsibilities. My friends would look at me leave the table and know that I was off to my daily shift or to that weekly lunch meeting I never skipped. I was feeling burnt out and still had 2 more years of college left. And so coming back junior year, I knew I wanted to rethink the way I interacted as a student here. And just the act of putting aside your responsibilities and anything else that is stressing you out and being with the people you care about makes a difference. For me, it was the small moments, like spending a little too much time in Commons or forgetting about my readings to just be clowns with my friends, that made me remember how special Bates is. I knew then that I wanted to take more time for myself and build relationships, an aspect of Bates that I often put off because of my responsibilities. As a first-gen student especially, I had to remind myself often that my being here is making the experience worth it. I had to allow myself to just be a student at times, a privilege that so many people take for granted. Now, as I near graduation, I want to remind all of us who are the first in our family to go on this wild ride and experience what it means to be a college student, that no matter what, we are worth it and we belong. Remind yourself that you don't need to catch up because you have worked doubly as hard to be where you are. You are worth it, and we have persevered. Thank you.
Hi there. For all of you who don't know me, my name is Essie Martin, and I'm really shocked to be on a Jumbotron right now. Okay. My friends here will tell you that there are 3 places to look for me on campus. First floor Ladd Library, second floor Carnegie, or by the gluten-free toaster in Commons. That toaster has been my savior, and I can tell you a dozen ways to prepare an allergy-safe meal from ingredients found in Commons. But it is also a powerful reminder of my 5-year struggle with illness during college. For me, illness has been intertwined with my time at this school, with social choices, academic realities, and dietary restrictions alike. I have always found it difficult to write about my illness. I don't know how to talk about it and encompass the full truth, a series of nuances and beauty through years of questions and new ways of seeing the world. Dead ends and possibilities, diagnosis and prognosis, an endless circle of words and white walls, none of which change the basic fact that I feel sick a lot of the time. Being sick makes everything intensely intimate. I have to explain, sometimes to near strangers, why I can't eat certain things in Commons, why I have to go to bed early, why I can't drink beer. Barriers come down faster, and the walls are thin. I came to understand the world this way, bringing friends into the quiet fold of my life. Together, we have found intimacy in the nooks and crannies of our fleeting time in college. And I know that there are all friends, all kinds of friends, that I'm alive, and here to tell you that the friends who are willing to stab you with an EpiPen are the real keepers. You know who you are. Everyone at Bates has a story, and mine is about illness, fighting for a spot on the front lines of life. I didn't choose this particular story. We all have sides of ourselves we show to the world, the stories we choose, and sides we keep to ourselves, hidden away for warmer times and the quiet of empty places. For me, what the world sees, and what many of you know, is an extroverted STEM enthusiast. It is true, that is me. I dance too big and sing too loud. I wear bright colors and laugh with my head thrown back. But I'm also quiet, an introvert at heart. I love poetry, the way it speaks between words on the page. I love silence and have learned to watch the world operate in my absence. This is how I understand my life, as 2 parts of a whole person, working together to find balance between art and science, music and stillness, sickness and health. I think a lot of growing up is learning to operate in gray zones, in the things unsaid. Oftentimes, we armor ourselves in a state of movement, addicted to urgency. In 2020, though, we were all forced into stillness. When the pandemic hit, I went home, lived in fear for a year, worried what the virus could do to me, to my friends, to the world. Suddenly, it was not just my own college experience that was tied to illness, but that of our entire generation. After taking a year away from Bates, my return to campus this fall was turbulent. Many of my friends had graduated, and I found myself out of sync with the theatrics and dramatics of college life. My quiet side had a good long run, and now it was time to get loud again. Read a geochemistry thesis, crack a joke in Commons, bust it down on the dance floor. Somehow, we made it through. I spent the spring in the sun with the people I love, loving what every second goes away. And now, I find myself at the end of what I know. Bates has not been easy, and our class's experience marred and distanced by COVID is unique. Thanks to years of practice as a sick person, I understood how to be still when the time came. So for those of you who have lived lives of strength and wellness, for whom COVID isolation has been a shock to the system, here are a few things to consider. This is wisdom I have learned from experience, and I offer it up as a graduation gift. I mean, it's not a car, or new luggage, or the first month's rent on your new apartment in DC, but it's what I've got to offer. Rest when you need rest, but when you feel well, live big. Never pass up an opportunity to turn daily life into a game. Assume best intentions from the people around you. Every now and then, let yourself be vulnerable. In doing so, give the gift of letting others take care of you. This matters because being a caregiver makes people feel purposeful. Remember that the spaces between words matter as much as the words themselves. It is not over, my own illness or the collective illness of this pandemic, but I know how to take advantage of the good moments, the spaces in between, stopping on the quad to jump in a pile of leaves, sneaking into the greenhouse, making a great deal of noise in Commons, passing notes in the library, making a damn good hot sandwich in the gluten-free toaster. I am at the end of what I know, but I'm ready. Ready to take advantage of the good days, embrace silence during the not-so-good ones. Sing loud, dance big. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you this year's Baccalaureate keynote speaker, Dr. Joshua Rubin. You're already making him blush. Great start. Josh has been at Bates since 2013 and has become a beloved visiting assistant professor in anthropology, member of the program committee in Africana, and a favorite first-year seminar instructor. Dr. Rubin holds degrees from University of Michigan and Yale and generously shares his brilliance on vastly interesting topics: the senses, aesthetics, art and power, the anthropology of sports, race, gender, and video games. In 2020, Dr. Rubin was selected by students as a co-recipient of the Krupsch Award for Excellence in Teaching. And this winter, Dr. Rubin was selected by the senior class through 2 rounds of voting as the person they most wanted to hear wisdom and advice from on the eve of commencement. I once met a student who, even after having taken all of Dr. Rubin's classes, followed along with his syllabus so they could continue discussing with their friends that were currently enrolled all of the transformative material that was being taught in the classroom. Many in higher ed, many of you here may know that syllabus reading is rare, even for a class a student is currently enrolled in. So I think this is not a small affirmation, but honestly the greatest praise you could give a faculty member. Dr. Rubin crafts his classrooms with creativity and joy, and his students never stop learning from him even after the exams and papers are done. But beyond his academic brilliance, Dr. Rubin is known as a tremendously caring human, a professor who truly meets students where they are with compassion and accompanies them with all the growth and hardship and hope that is integral to thoughtful becoming while in college. I have been very fortunate to come to know Dr. Rubin as a friend and colleague and find myself in a fairly constant state of awe as I watch the ways he puts his whole heart into this work, how devoted and caring he is to his family, shout outs to Melissa and Izzy, and all of his friendships, and even to his gourmet pizza making. I recommend you follow him on Instagram. Josh is all head and all heart, a real gift to us all. And now it is my privilege and my joy to welcome up Dr. Josh Rubin as the 2022 Baccalaureate keynote speaker.
You all are going to be so disappointed. All right, let's see. Going this way. All right. It's such a privilege to be selected for the ceremonial role. It's an incredible responsibility to be invited to impart some knowledge to you on the day of your graduation. I hope what I have to say will strike a chord with some of you. I'm going to be speaking today about flourishes and flourishing and the relationship between them. This idea has been bouncing around in my head for a very long time, and it's an honor to have the opportunity to work through it with you. What I will call flourishes are those little extravagant gestures of detail that things can have, and people and animals too. Harmless little things that have no clear function or use. They're superfluous and sometimes marvelous. I give this speech incidentally in honor of T.S., a queer and trans 2020 graduate of color who is known and loved by many of you. T.S. passed away in March of this year, and I miss them terribly. They were an absolutely wonderful person, completely singular, kind, courageous, and perfectly themselves. They were so full of these flourishes. I can't talk about flourishes without thinking of them. The speech isn't just about flourishes, but also about flourishing. Flourishing to me is about so much more than the bare fact of being alive. It's about growing into a world, not simply hesitating, but resting. It's about unfurling yourself, stretching out, and being yourself, being accommodated, welcomed, feeling valued. I went to New York right after the winter semester ended and spent some wonderful time in Central Park. New York is beautiful in the spring, as I'm sure many of you know, and Central Park is the epicenter of so much of that beauty. Central Park is also remarkable when you think about it. There's nothing novel in thinking about it this way, but it's still remarkable. The fact that in the middle of Manhattan, there exists a massive park that is available for anyone to use. It's remarkable that it was built at all, that it still exists despite our present world, where it seems like just about everything that can be monetized will be. If Central Park were proposed today, not even in Manhattan, but in an area that might someday become a Manhattan, it would be certainly rejected as unfeasible, impractical, a waste of public resources, extravagant. People have made similar points about public libraries, and I think these points are valid. There seems to be little social and political appetite for these kinds of projects today. This isn't a grand speech about how we should get behind public works and create spaces outside of monetization, though that would be great. Instead, I like to think of public libraries and Central Park as flourishes in our social world, as things that aren't regarded as strictly necessary or strictly feasible, but nevertheless add flair, complexity, distraction, and meaning to our worlds, little curly cues of extraneous detail. Libraries and parks are obviously meaningful in themselves, but I think it's possible to argue that they are also meaningful as flourishes, specifically because they add flair, complexity, distraction, and meaning to life, and because they're not strictly necessary. I've taught many of you graduates to be, over the past few years, but not nearly as many of you as I would have liked. And among those that I've taught, I know that each of you has your little flourishes. They manifest in how you write, how you sit, how you carry yourself, how you joke, how you smile, how you cry and dance and move and eat and play. These flourishes are like your embodied signature, and they make you who you are. Sometimes, speaking from experience, you choose those flourishes and make them your own, and sometimes they just happen. These little gestures might seem so different from a Central Park as to make it absurd to put them in the same speech, but I disagree. I think Central Park and your little flourishes are different in scale, but not in kind. And I think, too, that the little gestures that define you are as easily dismissed, easily denigrated, easily forgotten, and devalued as a newly proposed Central Park would be, especially right now when our world is on fire, and necessity and feasibility seem like the only things that really matter. You're going to get a job after you graduate, and unless you are very, very lucky, you will get a job that doesn't particularly care about what makes you who you are. You will learn jargony workplace acronyms and writing styles, and sometimes the stake of your work will be really high. You'll write emails read by thousands of clients or customers, and it has to be just right. No room for flourishes there. Flourishes, flair, distraction, it's all risk in that context. Some of you may get jobs building things or designing things. Today, there isn't much room for flourishes and those kinds of things either. Older buildings in older cities will have these little architectural details, little stonework strands of ivy or inlaid brick, little flourishes. Buildings today seem to have less of those, and I don't think it's because people are less creative, but because flourishes are less welcome. They cost time and money, and they're not strictly necessary. I understand the logic of this, I really, really do. Publishing a book was easily the highest stakes professional thing I've ever done, and I pored over every sentence again and again. My editors took out a lot of my flourishes, and I took out even more. Flourishes distract from the point. They add needless words and pages, which cost money. They're risky. At the same time, though, I think flourishes are intimately tied with flourishing. The connection isn't just about a play on words either. I think our ability to feel at home in the world depends on our ability not just to do the jobs we're asked to do or to live with others in ways that are necessary and feasible, but to perform the little flourishes that define us, whether they are big or small. I think a stonemason flourishes just a little bit more when they're allowed to carve some ivy into a building. I think a tattoo artist flourishes a little bit more when somebody says to them, just make a little art on my body. Central Park shows this too. Lying on the grass in the park feels so luxurious, so good, so restorative. The same is true for all the little flourishes that each of you offer up. They are essential to your singular self, and tending to them is important to validating that self. Being able to do the things that are singularly you is what makes it possible to unfurl yourself, to feel at home in a place, to grow and experiment and change. My first piece of advice to you then is this: don't lose track of your flourishes. Don't lose track of the tiny superfluous gestures that make you who you are. Monitor them, nurture them, even sneak them into places where they don't belong. They might be dismissed as unnecessary or frivolous, but they might also separate the specific from the generic, the you from everyone else who is almost like you. Those flourishes might even make things more fun for you, more personal and meaningful. More urgently, though, if those flourishes are essential to your flourishing, I worry if you get too good at writing emails to 10,000 clients, you might actually begin to think in mass emails. You might smile in mass emails, so to speak. You might move in mass emails. You'll have lost all the rough edges of yourself and become socially smooth, polished to shining by necessity. Some of you might think I've chosen some really bad examples here. Those old buildings, they're monuments to wealth and power, right? They survived because they were built by people who had the means to make them last and pay for flourishes that last. That Central Park, it was built over Seneca Village, a thriving and prosperous African-American community in the city that was displaced prior to the park's construction. It was also, of course, built on native land. And some people's flourishes are so close to the parameters of feasibility and necessity that they are permitted almost without question. I'm thinking of here something like the Super Bowl. If you've ever watched the Super Bowl with someone who doesn't follow sports, the chances are they think the whole thing is ridiculous. And they're not wrong. The whole event consists almost entirely of silly, extravagant flourishes. But those flourishes are so normative and accepted, they're not even widely recognized. Other people's flourishes, in contrast, are seen as wasteful, dangerous, intrusive, unwanted, denigrated. It's a lovely sentiment, you're probably thinking, to tend to your own idiosyncratic flourishes, but it's a reality of our broken world that some people's flourishes are valued and others are not. And you're absolutely right to think this. My second piece of advice to you then speaks directly to that point. Work consciously to make room for other people to flourish. There's lots of ways to do this, and I'm sure your classes at Bates provided you with many similar strategies. What I mean here is something prosaic, small, and entirely everyday. Make room for other people to perform their flourishes. Let them sing how they sing, dress how they dress, speak how they speak, and sit how they sit. Celebrate those flourishes when you can, when you have the strength, and when those celebrations are appreciated. Celebrate flourishes even if, especially if maybe, they're completely illegible or incomprehensible to you. Allow yourself to think things like, I have literally no idea what that person is up to, but look at them go. What an absolute marvel they are. Be okay with letting your confusion go unaddressed too. Their flourishes aren't for you, probably. Flourishes are usually for yourself, the shoes you wear because you feel good in them. You feel like you look good to yourself in them. They don't need to be explained really or made sense of. They're just little touches of you that happen to be available for the world to see. And you can celebrate the fact of someone's gestures, someone's flourishes, even if you don't understand exactly what you're celebrating. I think recognizing and celebrating these little details matters for the same reason that I think acknowledging your own flourishes matters. They're integral to creating space for people to flourish as people, to live flourishing lives. If we want other people to feel at home in the world as they are, not as the world demands them to be, it is incumbent upon all of us to welcome their flourishes. I think we have a strong moral obligation to do this, I really do. And I hope it's clear to you why I feel this way. Your flourishes are you, they're what make you special. They're how you matter to the world. And as Robin Wall Kimmerer writes in Braiding Sweetgrass, all flourishes are mutual. The fact of the matter is none of us will truly flourish unless all of us do. To many of you, this might seem like the most useless advice you could possibly get. Like in a time of myriad global crises, Josh is telling me to perform and celebrate little flourishes, precisely the things that don't matter. I totally understand where you're coming from with that, and I don't have time to convince you otherwise. But I do want to leave you with the reminder that the continuous injunction, the continuous command to strip things down to what is necessary, to do what is useful, might cut out all the things that make you unique. The pursuit of necessity might hinder your flourishing. It's also possible that the pursuit of absolute necessity is a major part of what has caused the calamities with which we live, and that flourishes are little glimpse of ways to live otherwise, to live other more fuller lives that are forbidden by necessity and nevertheless worthy of value and celebration. If this is even remotely possible, isn't it worth clearing space for those gestures? Isn't now a time when we should be trying everything, especially the things that make us feel at home in a world so often hostile and alienating? I'll leave you with that, I suppose, a glimpse of the hope that infuses each of you and all your little flourishes. It's barely visible maybe out of the corner of the eye, but it's there, and it's marvelous. Thank you again for this honor. Baccalaureate itself is a kind of flourish relative to the implications and solemnity of graduation, and I'm so proud to celebrate with you, all your talented peers, in this moment. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the senior class, we have benefited from guidance, compassion, and love of our parents, guardians, and mentors who have helped us transform into the young adults we are today. We thank you for your patience with us during these trying times. Two parents of senior class members, Miss Ayula Maji, mother of Shenemi Maji, and Alex Hoffinger, the father of Ben Hoffinger, will share reflections and advice to our graduating class. This wisdom comes from a mix of submissions from many seniors' parents and loved ones who dedicated time and energy to pass along insight to their graduating seniors. The parents' loved ones responded to following prompts. What about the Bates experience has most impacted your graduate and enabled them to grow? What does your students' graduation from college mean to you and your family? And what advice would you give the senior class during this time of transition? We thank you, Ms. Ayula Maji and Alex Hoffinger, and we thank our parents, guardians, and loved ones for lifting us up as we come to the end of our time at Bates College.
What about the Bates experience has most impacted your graduate and enabled them to grow?
With ardor and devotion, we cannot think of a more important and accurate way to describe our child's experience at Bates College.
Our graduate chose Bates because they felt at home here as soon as they stepped on campus for their college tour.
Our child's close relationships with faculty helped expand their intellectual capacity and confidence, and the small community helped them build long-lasting relationships.
The entire experience, from the Accepted Students Day to the senior thesis, has been a transformative experience. The experience was not quite what we all imagined, simply because the pandemic upended expectations.
We so desperately hoped as parents that we were able to give you wings to fly and show you the stars to guide your ship by. We realize now, and we hope that our child realizes it too, that they were inside them all along, and with the experiences, struggles, and successes they had here at Bates, they will be able to soar throughout their life.
Bates' academic rigor taught our graduate that disappointment can be a win-win situation. Our student got a healthy serving of humble pie.
Writing is thinking, and this practice of thinking has led to much intellectual growth.
We are so proud of you and your books at Bates College. You have taken them and run with them, to learn about them, to write about them, and to learn about you. What does your students' graduation from college mean to you and your family?
Dear graduate, it's been amazing to see you transform from a high school student into a truly independent young adult, it means the world to know that you ended up graduating from Bates College.
Bates has provided you with a solid foundation and given you a true liberal arts education. It has allowed you to explore your strengths and weaknesses, advocate for yourselves, and gain a stronger sense and appreciation for living in a diverse world, which will in turn make you a better citizen. Your graduation means so much because education is one of our family's touchstones. My own mother used to say, they can take your job, they can take your home, but they can never take your education away from you.
Graduating from college is a huge achievement, integrating one's humanity to do good work in the world, being your best self, working hard, learning self-care, and knowing that caring for your community, being kind and listening well, is another type of achievement that is lifelong and profound. These are life skills.
We urged you to take every opportunity offered by the school because we wanted them to learn to think critically and thoughtfully for the rest of their lives. Bates has done this in spades, and our graduate is well prepared for his next step. A worldwide pandemic is not what anyone would have asked for, but that is true for so much of what life will present. But your generation, more than any that has come before, has been forced to develop skills that will help you become the most effective leaders, thinkers, and humans that our world has ever seen. With your choice to attend and graduate Bates, we know that you will continue to grow, learn, explore, and encourage those around you to always strive to become a better vision of yourself.
What advice would you give the senior class in this time of transition? I'm so proud of all of you.
It is often said that we don't remember days, we remember moments.
Remember what it means to be a part of the Bates community. This will always be your place. These will always be your people, and this will always be your moment. Enjoy the journey.
Never regret a day in your life. Good days bring happiness, bad days give experience, worst days give lessons, and best days give memories.
Have a plan A, B, C, and D, and be prepared to change plans at a moment's notice.
You cannot alter the winds, but you can adjust your sails.
Do what you love and love what you do. Take the time to explore your options and give yourself grace if you don't immediately find exactly what you're looking for.
The unknown is a lesson in courage and adventure. Go for it. Live life with gusto and purpose.
Continue to learn. Never be afraid to ask. For all of the procrastinators out there, remember it's a lot easier to plan for the future than it is to plan for the past.
As William Bridges wrote, every transition begins with an ending.
The next chapter is about to start, and we cannot wait to see what comes next.
You've got this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hashki Venu. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let us walk with good companions to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do good will. Baruch atah Adonai, haforeis sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, va'al Yerushalayim.
Om bor buas suaha, tat savitor varenyam. Bargo devas yadimahi, Dio Yona prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
إنما العلم بالتعلم وإنما الحلم بالتحلم ومن يتوخى الخير يعطى ومن يتوقى الشر يوقى اللهم انفعني بما علمتني وعلمني بما ينفعني وزدني علما والحمد لله على كل حال وأعوذ بالله من عذاب النار.
Join me on a journey as I listen to one of my favorite Amapiano by Prince KB and Msaki. We are battling between pouncing our legs, left, right, our hands joining coordination, up, down, up, down. We're about to start turning around and getting low when Msaki sings, fetch your life, go and be alive. Ain't nobody living out here, be someone who's living out here. We pause because all of a sudden, we want to start again because I want to fetch my life. I want to be alive. I want to live out here. I want to feel alive spending hours in commons, knowing I have ignored all my academic responsibilities. After an intense school day, I want to feel alive, laughing, crying, screaming, and singing loudly on these college streets. I want to feel alive after 4 transformative, memorable, interesting, exciting, and beautiful years. As we say our goodbyes, or see you later, as we got accustomed to saying, some forever, some for a short time, some for a second. I hope that we have learned to live with each other. I hope that we continue learning and unlearning to live within ourselves and each other.